Good evening and welcome to a special stream of the Jaybefaunt channel. My name is James Fauntleroy. I am your host. It's so good to see you at 9 p.m. this evening on September 6th, 2022. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. As always, so good to see you. Just let you guys know the JB Font Show is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So you can subscribe to me there. I'm also a part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can subscribe to me on that channel as well. And I also do the JB Show on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, RBN Live at 4 p.m. on Tuesdays, and the Sabby and JB Show at 6. If you are new to the channel, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you are new, and also make sure to please subscribe and click the notification bell just to let you know whenever new content is uploaded. I like to give a shout out to my patrons on Patreon as well as on Coffee. For without you guys, I would not have a channel. So I deeply appreciate your contributions and support as well. I want to say hello to everyone who is watching on the rewatch on Rumble, as well as Rockfin, Twitch, and YouTube. It is so good to see you all here. Tonight, I have a very special guest with me. I have the guest that is a man of many professions and talents, and someone who really thinks deeply about our connection around the world. I have independent presidential candidate with me, Mr. Jon Stasevich. John, would you rather me call you Mr. Stasevich or John, whichever suits you?
John would be great.
All right, John, it's so good to see you, and welcome to the JB Font channel.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I mean, it's a pleasure to, thank you for letting me appear in front of your audience. And as we had talked earlier, I know that your audience is well informed because you're well informed, and they clearly understand the problems that we are facing in our society.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to reach out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And also introducing to be joining me on my stream is Eric T. Red. Eric, so
Hey.
good to see you and nice to have you on my channel today.
All right, I'm excited.
Hmm. So yeah, I'm just excited to have this conversation. And I'm kind of incorporating some of my own questions with some of the resources that you have provided as well, Eric. So I think this is going to be a really great conversation to get to incorporate to kind of expand the minds of people who may still believe in voting, because some of my audience doesn't at all, but some of my audience does. And so for a lot of people who do still believe in going through that process, I wanted to bring some of the policy beliefs that you have, as well as some of the strategic beliefs that you would like to do, and as to the real reason why you're pursuing the office of president in this country. Um, Eric, if you don't mind, can you also introduce yourself and what you do so that the audience has a little bit more knowledge about who you are?
Sure. So it all started many years ago. No, I remember, I was watching Jimmy Dore, and
Yeah.
then he went on this show with this person, Sabby Sabs. You may have heard of her now, and I saw what she was up to, and I was like, this woman is totally based, as the kids like to say, and I watched more and more of it, and was really impressed with her and where she was coming from, what she was saying, and then eventually I kind of reached out and asked, if she wanted some help on like the YouTube and the moderating and the chats, and she was open to that. And then eventually, I asked, do you want some help with like the StreamYard and kind of the engineering and the production? And she was, open to that. And at this point, I'm in the kind of the background every night. And once in a while, I even get on the foreground. And yeah, I've been really working with her on that. And of course, I always watch RBN, what you're doing, JB. And yeah, then at one point I kind of came up with this idea of the 11 demands for real democracy kind of thing. And JB, you mentioned that at one point on or kind of took a look at that at one point on your show, which was really cool. And then one day on Sabby Sab, she had this guest of this independent presidential candidate, Jon Stasevich. And I'm like, who's that guy? And as John talked more and more, it was like he was going down my list and checking them off. So I just saw a lot of alignment on that. And so then kind of similarly, I reached out to John and we found, a lot of, being very copacetic. And at this point, we've been working on John's campaign and his vision. There's a small team that are collaborating. Okay. And I think what we're going to find here is that as we go through John's policies and what he's about, I just think there's a lot of, what do you call that? Just similar mindset coming together.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. As far as people getting to know you, John, actually, this goes into my first question that I would really like to ask. So, as soon as I get myself together, what is the main driver for why you decided to run for president of the United States?
Well, the main driver, of course, is, and it's hard not to see it, but the injustice that's all around us. Okay.
Of course.
And I was very involved in Bernie Sanders' campaign. And then when Bernie went with Hillary Clinton, then I moved over to Jill Stein. And so I've always wanted to work with people who were looking to produce progressive change. Well, after Bernie, the second time around, goes in and decides that he's going to support Joe Biden, and we're back to the establishment a second time. And I'm thinking, what's going to happen next? Who's going to replace Bernie? Where's our next warrior going to come from? And as I looked around, nobody was entering the race. I heard a lot of different people talking about it. Oh, I'll investigate it. I'll think about it. And then I thought, by the time they get involved, any third party candidate, because I wouldn't vote for a major party candidate at this point. We can get into that later. But there wasn't anyone from third parties getting involved. And the big issue that third parties have, of course, is the challenges for ballot access, even getting on the ballot, let alone getting the votes, getting their voice out, breaking through the mainstream media bubble. And so as no one was showing up, I just realized I've got to do this. I have the background. I know what the problems are. And I've thought deeply about what the solutions are. So that's what prompted me to do that. And of course, I was starting with just me. But I was lucky enough to meet a couple of really great individuals who helped me put together my website, helped me put together my campaign. And now, as Eric said, we have a really great team. And I think that this team of mine is in it to win it. So a lot of people wonder, can a independent do it? Or could a third party do it? Well, we believe that this is the year. And in fact, this election in 2024 is not going to be decided in 2024. It's going to be decided between now and the end of 2023. So I knew we had to get in early and lay the groundwork. And I'm not delusional. I know what I'm up against.
Of course.
Right. And so that's what prompted me to announce my candidacy.
Can I make a pitch for John?
Sure. Go ahead.
Imagine we've been talking about Door 24, right? And Jimmy Dore has said that he he doesn't have it in him to run. He wishes someone else had his ideas in his platform, or his, what would be his platform. He wished that person would run. Well,
Hmm.
what if we have that person here? What if you go down the checklist of the things you're looking for in a candidate, and we're going to be going through that in the Stasevich 2024 vision. What if that
Hmm.
person meets those things that you're looking for, and we have a person here, John, who's raised his hand and said, "I'll give it a shot." Wouldn't that be
Yeah.
exciting?
Hmm.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah. And, just a question, because there's some people who run who say things like, ah, I'm just running just to make a statement. And, you have some that really, they don't have really the push to actually win. It's more just to, make a statement on policy. What would you say to people who may be thinking that?
Are you asking me?
Yes, yes, Sean, I'm sorry.
Um, well, as I said, I'm not here to make a statement. I'm here to make a change, a real change. And as I said, we're in it to win it. We are not stopping until the very end. And
Yeah.
what's going to be required from our perspective, and the first real initiative that we have is getting ballot access. So on that website, if you go further down that main page, there's a form there, and we are asking people who have our vision, that share our vision, to complete that form. And so
Hmm.
we'll have the names and addresses of people in all 50 states. So
Hmm.
when ballot access time comes, let's say in Michigan, where I live,
Hmm.
I can go into the database and sort through for everyone in Michigan. And I can go directly to these people and ask them if they are willing to keep the petition at their home site. So that when
Mm.
I publish that out to everybody else and I say, here's where you can go to sign that ballot, because there's a window of opportunity and each state has different rules. But let's
Okay.
say Michigan requires 35,000 signatures on the petition. I don't want 35,000. I want 235,000. I want 300,000. I want to overwhelm it. So that's why I'm starting now, and I'm starting to collect. So the first thing that I need to do is organize that grassroots campaign, because we know how the media blocks independents and third-party candidates.
Hmm.
So that third party is a grassroots, back
Okay.
down in the streets, old-time politics, mouth to
Okay.
mouth, person to person. And if I
Hmm.
tell 10 people, and if I can convince them that my vision is the best way forward for the United States and the world,
Hmm.
and if they agree with me and they tell 10, and those 10 tell 10, 8 generations later, we've got 100 million people. And now Joe
Yeah.
Biden won the election on 83 million votes. So that's all it
Hmm.
takes.
Okay. Thank you so very much. There's a lot of people who ask the question, why? And you spoke about the injustice, but there's so many people who are at a point where, and like we said in private conversation, that, is it doable? And your optimism that was coupled with realism was very encouraging to me. Um, and so, if you don't mind, if you can give us a scope of how it's doable from your perspective.
Well, what's unique about my campaign, other than being an independent candidate, and there have been a couple in the past, of course, Ross Perot comes to mind,
Yeah.
and the times have changed.
Hmm.
When I engage people today and I ask them, as you look out at the United States of America, do you think we're going down the right road? Can you see life getting better for you, your children, and future generations? Is
Hmm.
this the nation that you want to
Yeah.
raise your family in? that you want to enjoy, be a part of. And most people that I've spoken to across the spectrum, and I'm talking from the ultra left to the ultra right, say, no, we aren't going down the right path.
Mm-hmm.
And they really recognize the fact that we're divided.
Yeah.
Now, no matter what kind of team you are, a national team, a baseball team, basketball team, political team, no matter what kind of team you are, business team, it's going to be very difficult if you're a divided group to succeed. Well, as a nation, success means success, health, and prosperity for our people.
Yeah.
So if we're widely divided, as we are, at least that's what, when you talk to people, you can see that there are many out there who are blaming others, they're pointing a finger, but that's only because the mainstream media sets it up that way.
Yeah.
I know that we're not divided, actually. Actually, we've got so much more in common,
Mm-hmm.
common humanity. We all want a healthy society for our children.
Mm-hmm.
We want them to be happy. We want their basic needs met. We want them to be well educated. We want them to be independent and even to be able to go beyond that and give something back to the community of which they're a part of.
Mm-hmm.
So I went, and as I spoke to different people across the spectrum, I found broad agreement. So
Yeah.
one of the things my campaign doesn't do is blame other people. We don't point the finger. I understand that we have a system. We have a political system and an economic system, and we operate within that context. And so where Bernie Sanders was blasting the billionaires,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, the way I look at that, say Warren Buffett, he recognizes the injustice. He's come right out and said that we're involved in a class war and my class is winning. And he has stated that he pays less on a percentage basis in taxes than his secretary.
Okay.
So he sees the injustice. But you know what? He's not going to be motivated to do anything about it or change it because the system's working well for him personally. And anyway, that's not his skill. That's not what he does with his life. What he's been trained to do and what he's done successfully within the confines of the system is make a lot of money. He's very good at it. So the change isn't going to come from the billionaires. They have no motivation to change it. It's going to come from us, the working class people and the poor people.
Mm-hmm.
You can't expect a savior to walk out of the elite group and save us. It's not going to happen. So we have to do it ourselves. So those people who don't believe that we can do it, I just like to remind them, just numerically, we're the 99.8% of the population. And it's only a very tiny group of people that you can fit in my living room that actually own and control our economic environment, which means they control our economics for all of us. And so we're not in a position where we can actually control our own lives. But nobody wants to be in that position. We actually do want to control our lives. And so I'm presenting another option, and I just have to convince people who say, there's no way an independent candidate can win. The system is rigged.
Mm-hmm.
I want to let you know that that's just a belief. It has nothing to do with reality. The numbers tell me we can win. The people I talk to across the spectrum tell me I want to change. So now all I have to convince them is they have the power to do it. And once they change their belief that they have the power, they'll act on it. So if you believe, as an example, that there's no way an independent could win, well, then why would you invest any money or any time volunteering for the campaign to help me do it? You wouldn't, because you already know he can't win. Why? That would be insane, right? And so my challenge then, of course, is to change belief, to explain to people why we can actually win. And that you don't have to accept what is. Those dreams that you have for your family, for your children, for all of us, for our society and for the world, they aren't unrealistic.
Yeah.
It just takes, we've got the dreams. All we need is the political will to pull it off. And
Mm-hmm.
you can't do it by not voting and not getting involved. You have to
Mm-hmm.
get involved. That's the way democracy works. So if
Mm-hmm.
you want to control your destiny, you have to do something. Now, a lot of people today are struggling. They don't have the resources and the money to help. And I don't think that an independent campaign actually needs a lot of money. But what I do need are people who are willing to volunteer. People are going to go out into the street, talk to their friends, engage their neighbors, bring them in, help get me on the ballot, understand the vision, and understand what we want to do and how we're going to get through that change. That will be enough motivation. And I think we're going to pull it off. I actually think we're going to win it, even though I know some people are more skeptical. But
Yeah.
I'm working to change their minds.
Yeah. You know what? Here's my thing, and I'm going to minimize just for a second so that so people can see my eyeball. So to anybody who is watching, except for you, Savvy, you're good, and you, Heartlands Media. But to any of you that really value democracy and who really do think that we should be embracing of independence and third parties running, and if someone like John or anybody else that is not within the duopoly uh, electorally tickles your fancy, and you have a channel, a platform, I dare you, I dare you to have them on. And I'm talking to the people who have 100,000, 2, 3, 4, a million followers, a million subs in order to be able to do that. You see, here's the thing that and I think you and Eric will agree that I have an issue with is that a lot of times people will complain, and I'm going to be honest with Brianna Joy Gray talking to Crystal Ball recently was talking about how, well, third parties and independent candidates aren't viable. My thing is, it's that's your belief. You could make them viable or have name recognition just by introducing them to the people, just by talking about it and saying, Mr. Stasevich, would you like to come on and have her on the show so you can talk about your platform? Just imagine if you could actually get those numbers up and actually spread the word among people. And so that's the thing that I put towards people, because like I said for my channel, I said I'm going to have independent and third party people on my channel because I don't want to be the person that says, "Oh, you guys need to have this person on," when I'm not doing it myself, right? You got to, you know, you have to talk the talk and walk the walk, right? So that's one thing that I would put out to people there, and I just want to thank you, John, for talking about how it is doable. The thing is that we just have to have the belief in ourselves and the belief in our neighbors in to do it by and a lot of times I think what we do is we can excite others by maybe the policy positions and the potential of what can happen and what could be, right?
Mhm.
So that's something that I wanted to bring
Having
out.
been a nurse on a neurology unit, I've been, maybe it's a good time to talk a little bit about human psychology, because I don't want, when I tell people all you have to do is change your belief, it's
Hmm.
easy to say, but I think rather than just taking my word for it that you could do it and you change your belief, maybe it's worth it to talk for a moment about cognitive human psychology.
Of
And
course.
the basic premise of human psychology is that we as human beings do not act in accordance with the truth. We act in accordance with the truth as we believe it.
Yeah.
So, where do we get our beliefs? We get our beliefs from our own thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So we're collecting information from the world through our senses.
Mm-hmm.
And that information enters our mind, and we
Mm-hmm.
process it, and we think about it, and we build these thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
for instance, you could build a self-image by over and over and over again saying, I'm capable, I'm smart, I'm intelligent. And guess what? Those thoughts build, and you thinking millions of times through your mind these thoughts, and they build into a self-image. So it's kind of like a painter. If you think about a human being as a canvas and your mind as being the painter, every
Mm-hmm.
time you have a thought, you put a stroke on that canvas with your brush.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you keep putting the strokes and putting the strokes and putting the strokes, and then an image appears. So you create your reality in your own mind, and it has nothing to do with the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the truth is, numerically, when we're 99% and it's the 1% that are opposing this change and not willing to produce the kind of just world that we all want and deserve, just numerically, you have to see that that's irrational. It doesn't make sense. We do have the power that way. So basically, my challenge is to make people understand how we come up with these false beliefs. For instance, that an independent doesn't stand a chance, the system is rigged.
Mm-hmm.
There is some truth to all of that because of the perceptions, but don't forget too that our perceptions are different, and we don't want to blame other people when they are. So for instance, you had mentioned crystal ball.
Yeah.
Crystal ball has these beliefs, not because crystal ball's a bad individual or a terrible individual,
Mm-hmm.
but because you're not in her shoes. When she looks at the world, the information she collects through her senses and based on her experiences, which filters out information, we could get more deeply into psychology, she ends up with this worldview. So it isn't that she is, wrong. It's just the way her conditioning works. It's the way it went. So by explaining how we build our self-images and getting right into the psychology, then people can begin to understand how they can change their beliefs. So it's okay to dream. It's okay to want a better world, one in which all children get all of the basic needs met. Nobody is deprived. And that's how you grow a healthy community, one individual at a time. You let one individual get by, and that individual is going to be a burden to society rather than an asset. And it'll bring all boats down. And when you get a large number, so if you have a really dysfunctional system, as we do, you end up with an 18-year-old that picks up an AR-15, walks into a schoolroom, and blows away a classroom of kids and teachers. That's certainly insane. And it's because that individual was deprived of what he needed. And so we end up with this dysfunction. So we have to think about how we build our beliefs that we then act in accordance with. So my challenge is to make you understand that you can believe and you can turn it into truth because your actions are going to follow your beliefs. Once you believe that an independent can win, you're going to act in accordance with that belief. And then you're going to work for my campaign and you're going to help me do it. Now, if another person comes along, any person that's more capable than I am, has a better vision than I am, then I'm going to get behind him and I'm going to ask everyone who supports me to do the same. So we're inviting everybody across the entire spectrum to come in and have the discussion, an open, honest, rational discussion about what we want and how we're going to get there. I'm going to have people from the right, from the left, and everything in between, because we don't blame people. We understand that their conditioning's different, so their perspective's different. But those differing perspectives are really great, because sometimes you're going to have somebody come in that opens your eyes, that tells you something that you're not aware of, and maybe shows you even a better way. And that's how we build on our platform.
So, John, are you telling me that we can have nice things?
We can have whatever we want.
Okay.
We create our world.
Hmm. So as far
Hear
as
that,
that,
JB? We can have ice cream.
well,
We have
not me,
flavor.
unfortunately, but
No, that's
uh,
right. You can't.
well, but just a question though, what do because you pointed towards material conditions. What do these material conditions look like?
Well, I'm not just talking about material conditions, but we'll start there. So
Hmm.
as an example, when you're born, I mean, basically you're a blank slate. And our children, what do they need? So in developmental psychology, they have something called developmental blocks that are pretty well defined. And the doctors, when they look at these children, they're looking to see if the child meets those blocks. Well,
Hmm.
in order for them to get that, they're going to need good nourishment.
Hmm.
They certainly cannot be abused, right?
Hmm.
And they need adequate sleep. As they get older, they need mentors, people that will work with them, pay attention to them, people that will love them, people that will make them feel secure. So let's suppose that a child is born into a family that's struggling. What do we do to solve the problem? What society does, rather than allowing that kid to go through that and be deprived of the love or maybe the kind of parenting that he needs, is we could choose to invest our resources where they're needed right there. And let's help that family so they understand how to raise that child.
Hmm.
They want to do it, but they just may not have the skills. Maybe it's a young mother. Maybe she doesn't have a support group behind her, the family behind her that she needs. So we need an integrated set of social services targeted where the need is the greatest.
Hmm.
Well, it's greatest in every child. So wherever we see dysfunction, that's where we want our integrated social service network to come in and then start doing the interventions, just like a doctor does interventions. When you see an illness, the doctor intervenes. He does what he needs to get you back to health.
Hmm.
That's what a social service network can do. That might include psychologists, psychiatrists, medical doctors,
Hmm.
teachers, whatever that family needs. So, how do we identify in a child dysfunction? It, the school is one place. In the school, if a child is failing, it's not because he's not bright enough. It's just that something is missing. And so, instead of the education system just passing them along to the next level without actually looking into what the problem is and focusing on that, we have the right resources in the school to identify it. But even before school, we can do it preschool. We can do it through the doctors. So we have prenatal care, postnatal care. So all the way through the lifespan, we're identifying where there's issues and dysfunction. And then we come in and we invest our resources there. And within one generation, we will literally wipe out, well, not 100%, but to very great extent, the kind of dysfunction that we're seeing in our world today, the violence, um, the insecurity, people who are not well enough educated to maintain themselves, let alone give back.
And
So
then, John,
we know,
if I could just jump in, then I think what you're also saying, as far as your campaign and what you're doing in a global way, is you also want to take this vision and apply it to the political system and apply it to the economic system. And that's what we're talking about in terms of these systemic interconnected changes.
right, and those two systems, Eric, they're connected. Of course, it starts with the economic system. And what we have today is a corporate corrupted duopoly. I actually call them, it's actually a monopoly. I think of it as one corporate corrupted political party disguised as a two-party system. Now, why would the oligarchy want to have two parties when they could just have one? Well, if you have
Hmm.
two, they could have the different rhetoric. They could be
Hmm.
pointing a finger at each other, and then they could use their private media to divide us along every kind of line you can imagine. They atomize us into tribes. I'm on the left tribe. I'm on the right tribe. I'm on the blue tribe. I'm in the oh, your skin color is dark. Yours is white. And so we become divided. And when we're a divided community, we don't thrive, we don't succeed, and we don't prosper. Everybody, we learn that at a very young age. We get to be adults. What, did we forget all of those lessons? No. So we have to revisit, and we have to understand that we construct the world we want. You have to take responsibility. But if you don't believe you could do it, then you're not going to act to do it. And which is why I think it's so important that we dive into the human psychology, and so people understand that you can create the person you want to be just by changing the way you think. Wow.
But one of the things that I notice is that a lot of times when we think about the realities that we have, for instance, people like, for instance, in my case, some of those realities of being able to do what we want needs is in need of resources in order to be able to do it. And so there's a lot of us that say, well, we really want to do these things, but the thing is that the resources are lacking. And so there may be those of us that want to do more in regards to the mental health of our child by spending more time with them, but some of us have to work, many hours at our job or multiple jobs, and so that we don't have the time to be able to devote to spending time with that child. Or we may want to be able to focus more on our own mental state, and so we want to be able to do that, but we just don't have the resources to be able to take that time off. I mean, many of us don't have vacation time because it's not required by law within this country. And so because of that, then we can believe this, but at the same time, is the system conducive for us to be able to do that? That's my question. Like, how do we do that, outside of the system that doesn't allow us to be able to do these things, if even if we were to believe them? You know what I mean?
Yes. So I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yes, the system is the way it's structured now. The resources aren't there, but it isn't because there's not an abundance. We have an abundance of resources, but they're not. Our priorities are not aligned with human health and well-being. Our priorities in a capitalist system are aligned with profit.
Yes.
So a corporation, in order to survive the way our economic system is designed, they must get profit to survive, which means they have to do whatever they can to get that. There's nothing in the equation about doing what's best for the community, doing what's best for the environment, doing what's best for human health. And since the ownership is concentrated, the profit gets concentrated, and then that profit is used to manipulate the political system so that the people at the bottom and the middle don't even have the ability to change it, because they don't have representation. So you're right, the system currently doesn't allow us to do that, which is why you have to recognize that you have to get active. You have to do something. So if you don't have money, that's okay. Do you have some time? Could you get on the phone? Could you talk to your neighbor? Some people can do nothing. They're not capable. But getting back to the resource issue, it's a matter of how we distribute those resources. So I'm going to talk about, and I think when I was on Savvy's show, I mentioned healthcare, and I'll use that as another example.
Cool.
But I could talk about the military industrial complex and the waste there. And I could talk about the waste in education. And I could talk about the extreme waste in the justice system, the prison system. There is waste everywhere. So the priorities are controlled by a handful of people, a very small handful of people. And there's all this waste. And so by taking the presidency, we can change that. Let's talk about healthcare.
Okay.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Germany, France, the Netherlands, Switzerland, all of those countries, in fact, almost every industrialized country in the world offers their citizens health care from cradle to grave through the entire lifespan.
Yes.
Now, you would think, oh, wow, how could we afford to do that? We can't afford it. We're the richest nation on earth, though. So wait a minute. Switzerland, France, and Germany, we can't? How could that be?
Yeah.
Well, we spend, here's the facts around our healthcare system. We spend about $12,000 per capita right now, and we'll take Germany or France, and they spend about $6,000. Guess what? They've got the best healthcare outcomes, objective healthcare outcomes based on every study in the world. So they serve their population and do a great job relative to others like the United States, who is at the very bottom when it comes to objective healthcare outcomes. And yet they spend $6,000 per capita, half of what we do.
Yeah.
So there's a $6,000 delta, and we've got 332 million people. But rounding it to 300 million, 6 times 3 is 18. And multiply that over a 10-year span, that is $18 trillion that we are wasting and getting a worse outcome every decade. 18 trillion each and every decade, which means in one generation, let's say 2 decades, right? In one generation, you just threw away 36 million or 36 trillion, $36 trillion. We take that money now and we recover it by just even copying them, but I think we could do better. But even if we copied them and saved that 18 trillion every decade, now we got the resources to go into the families who aren't able to provide what they need for their children, and we help them out, and we lift them up, and we give them what they need. And the end result is that we get a healthy, happy, productive next generation. And then that lifts all boats. So the resources are there, but the political will to distribute them according to need is not there. Where it's distributed, not according to need, but according to greed. And that's what capitalism is.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Eric, did you have anything you wanted to add to that point?
The website.
Well, I think this would be probably a good time to bring up the share if you want to talk about what we're calling the Stasevich 2024 vision. And this is from the Jon Stasevich 2024.com website. There we go. And basically this part of the site kind of lays out the plans and the issues that Jon in the campaign that are about. And we can go through those in as much detail or overview as you're up for, JB.
Sure.
Well, let me say something about this vision before we get into it. So there's some things there. Okay, so we have some immediate needs. In other words, we have people right now who are suffering and in pain.
Yes.
And so some of these line items are meant to address that. Some things that we can do immediately. So as an example, school debt. At the stroke of a pen, if I'm elected president, that's gone. Wiped out. And now, right? So that's something I can do immediately. Now, is that a good long-term plan? No, because long-term, we don't want to put people in debt at all going to college. So we need a single public education system that everyone can access and everyone goes, rather than the tiered one we have now where you've got private schools for some people that can afford them and they get the best, and then public schools that don't even have their buildings safe for the children, leaky ceilings. And so we've got a tiered system right now. When we have a single public education system, which is the long-term plan, and it's and we use the sciences of education, we can improve the way we educate kids. It's absolutely astounding to me. Think about a system that has kids going even 12 years and they get out and they can't support themselves after 12 years of training. Are you kidding me? There's a system that is dysfunctional, but it's a tiered system, right? And so now some people can come out and they do very well because they've got the money. But today, money is the deciding factor on who gets the good education. So if you're born into a family with the money, if you're born into a supportive family, if you were born lucky, as opposed to being born unlucky where you had none of that, you were deprived all those basic needs, then we get a big difference in outcome. And that's the socioeconomic difference.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that. So there's some questions that I have. Now, of course, as you see here, the first thing you have is basically about money in politics, which is one of the biggest obstacles that I think that we have in this country.
Always focus on the money.
Yep. Follow, like Sabby always says, follow the money, right? So it says nothing will change as long as big money runs the show. So you talk about constitutional amendment that says corporations are not people and money is not speech. Can you expound on that just a little bit?
Well, there's a good reason we put this at the top. Actually, this is job one for us, for our campaign, and for when I'm in the White House. This is the very first thing. If I get there, it means I've had maybe 100 million people that supported me and put me there to represent them. Okay.
Yeah.
With 100 million people, I'm going to be an activist president. We're going to be organized. I'm going to challenge Congress to adopt public funding, only public funding. We're going to get all of the special interest money out of the system. So I'm going to organize that 100 million people. I'm going to go into the streets with them, and I'm going to go into each and every district. Any representative that doesn't go with the People's Party, that's there to make money off the system rather than represent the people, who needs this kind of capital coming into the system. You realize that Joe Biden and Donald Trump each had $1.2 billion in their campaign. Wow, that's a big waste of money. Do we really need to spend that kind of money on two candidates? That's $2.4 billion. What would have happened if we could have taken that money and applied it to our society, our communities, right? So there's another big waste. So we need publicly funded elections, and that's job one. But any representative that won't make that, put that into law, codified it in the law, public elections only, public funding, right? No private money, no special interest money, not from unions, not from individuals and wealthy people, not from lobbyists, no one, okay? Just public funding. If they don't do that, I'll be in the streets with the people that put me there. And we're not going to wait for the next primary to primary them out. We're going to have recall campaigns, and we're going to get them out even before then. Okay, so I'm going to be an activist president. That is job one. That will take us closer to democracy. That's the starting point. And once we get there, now the people will have representation. And then, another question that I have when it comes to public service, I don't think that the people of the United States have ever, at least in the White House, had somebody that served them. In fact, we serve those politicians. We're not served by them, right?
Yeah.
So I have to wonder, how is it that they can vote themselves a raise without coming to us? We're the ones that are producing it. We're the ones working and paying the taxes. And why is it that their compensation isn't pegged to the people's compensation that they represent? So I've got an idea. What about pegging their compensation to the compensation of their average constituent? So if they want a pay raise, you make sure your constituents get a pay raise, and you'll get it right along with them. So there's a lot of things we want to do to make the system more fair and more just as political system, but it starts with this, getting the money out.
Yeah. So basically what it sounds like you're saying is the success of a politician is dependent upon the constituency, the most vulnerable of the constituency. Is that correct?
No. I'm saying that you could say, for instance, the average wages. So, for many very real reasons, you're going to have some people that can, all incomes are not going to necessarily be exactly equal. You're going to have people who have greater abilities, more skills. So as you acquire skills in life, you should be paid based on the merit. But what I would recommend is limiting the top wealth. So we talk about minimum wage. I want to talk about maximum wealth, right? So does it make sense for a single human being to be worth $250 billion? That's enough money for the next 20 generations of his family to survive. It makes no sense. He's never going to need that kind of money. And the only thing that happens when you do that is they use that money to corrupt the system to even get more. Okay.
Yeah.
So, so I would think that maybe you could look at skill levels that people have in their talents and their abilities. And maybe we have at the low level a good livable wage, one that can allow that family to be healthy and do all the basic things and provide all the basic things that a family does need to raise children, right? So that's the bottom. And at that top pay level, let's say 10 levels. So you could have 10 levels. Everybody would fit into about one of 10 brackets. And then when you hit maximum wealth, if you decide you no longer want to work, that's all right. You're not irreplaceable. You can leave the workforce. You could go on. And we'll find somebody that can do that job. But maybe we have something like 10 pay tiers. These are things that we ought to be discussing. I'm not saying that this is the way it has to be, but I want to open the discussion. These are things we should be talking about. I'm open to ideas. As a matter of fact, we're inviting the oligarchy in. Come on in. You tell us how you see it. We'll openly discuss it. We'll publicly discuss it, and we'll democratically decide what we want. We're not going to let a few people use their wealth and power to even rip more out of the system. There has to be some basic justice. And so there's a top end at that an individual should tap out. We could debate. Should it be, 5 million, 10 million? These are things we could debate. And what would the bottom be? The bottom's got to be enough so that anyone that goes and invests a 40-hour work week or whatever it ends up being can support themselves and their family. And in a world like that, now when you start thinking about automation and technology, many people today fear it because of the consequences it produces. Since the benefit only goes to the owners of that technology and none of it goes to the bottom, what happens at the bottom is they lose their job.
Yeah.
You were replaced by a machine. So of course you're going to be resistant to change. You're not going to want to change. But when the benefit is spread across, then we're going to welcome technology. So instead of working 40 hours a week, maybe we only have to work 20 hours a week. Then we can spend more time with our families, invest more in our kids. They can get the love. They can get the recreation time, all of the things we need to be healthy. So it all will come together, but we want to do it in a democratic way. And we don't want to be blaming people because, remember, like I said, everybody is operating in the context of the system. And so let's say I'm imagining that a lot of the people in Congress today would love to actually represent the interest of their constituents rather than the billionaires that put them there, right? Or the special interests that put them there. But they can't do it because it requires in the system, the way it's rigged now, it requires a lot of money to get in. Now, how much money did Bernie Sanders get as example? Grassroots organization, I think about 200 million. I don't even think I need that much in my campaign because I don't think it's not your money that I need, it's your votes. It's your actions, it's your activity. I might need a little money for those that can afford them, I would ask them to donate whatever they can. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's $1, $2, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 1,000. I don't know. But we should all have a shared vision because we all want to have a society that's going to succeed and prosper. And then we have to go beyond our borders. We have to take it out to the world. We need to set the example for others in the world to look at. We've got to stop these endless wars for profit, perpetual wars for profit. Why
All right, John, we're going to get there. We're going to get there.
All right.
Now, one thing I wanted to hit on is that people will, unless, I don't know, James, did you want to jump in? I don't want to
No, we can go. We can continue on.
All right, you want to go where I'm taking? No, it's So one of the things people will say is that what's the point of any of this if the elections are rigged, right? So one of the main things that we need to be working on and being part of any independent real campaign like this that's really going to get somewhere is election reform.
Hmm.
And so that, so in the vision at this point, we have this as, number two on the runway, and that we need to be, we need to have an election system we can trust, and it's about open source software, it's about ranked choice, it's about ballot access, and all those things.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So I'm trying to. I gotta speak carefully because we're on YouTube, and 1-6 last year. If somebody says anything, regarding the integrity of a particular election of somebody, then next thing we get we get we can get hit with a strike or something. But as we noticed uh, in 2020, especially, and one thing I do say is that there's no true election integrity in either party. From what I've noticed, there's not election integrity within the Democratic Party, especially if you look at their primaries. We definitely know there's not in the Republican Party. And so, with that being said, uh, I don't know much about the star voting systems. I apologize for that.
Now, not
It's
that many
still
people do.
Yeah, it's still brand new, so I still have to do my research. I do know a little bit about ranked choice voting, and from what it sounds to me, it sounds like a much better system than what we have. Um,
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the way that things run right now, of course, is that you have a Democrat and a Republican, and if a third party or an independent comes in, then they say, oh, they're spoiler. They're going to
yeah.
split the vote and whatnot. If we do ranked choice or star, then that problem doesn't exist anymore. And with the Democrats and Republicans, they can rig their stuff all they want because John's going to be out here running as an independent, right, John?
That's the plan.
So my thing is that as far as the ranked choice voting is concerned, I'm favorable for that until I learn more about star voting. I heard star voting for some people they've considered star voting to be even better system than ranked choice.
I can give it to you in a nutshell. It's basically the same as ranked choice. You just give your candidate like how many stars you want. So your favorite candidate, you give them 5 stars, and
Okay.
it's basically just a way that you mark them on the ballot. But it kind of works better because people can understand it better when they're in the voting booth or have their ballot.
So it's kind of like Star Search for voting.
Yeah, yeah. Give them the stars. And
Okay.
there's a link there from John's website. If you go to that site, you can click through, and there's all kinds of info.
Okay. Perfect. And the last line says enact the national popular vote system to fix their electoral college. So I personally say get rid of it.
Hmm.
This says fix it. What will be in the way that you would work to fix it?
Yeah, John and I were talking about this actually last night. We were kind of going over these points and whatnot. Yeah, the ideal thing would be to have a constitutional amendment to get rid of it. The problem is the constitutional amendment is hard, and we need. And what could actually be done faster and easier is this national popular vote system, where it's basically an interstate compact where the states that pass it agree that they're going to give all their electors for the electoral college to the winner of the popular vote. And it basically is a workaround that gives you a national popular vote in the end. And of course, we have our helpful link there. Anyone who wants to go through and see the details.
Well, we
And it's not our thing. This is the thing that's been out there,
yeah.
but
Now
we
now we
support it.
we've deconstructed all of these issues and we've separated them as if they were not connected, but in fact they're all connected, right? So
Definitely.
once we have representation by getting the money out of politics, the people, the representatives will actually represent us. Their reelection won't be based on, how deep their the pocketbooks of their supporters are, or their funders, their campaign funders.
Gotcha.
So these are all connected, and then of course the healthcare and the money. So even though we've broken them out into sections, and there's some things that we could do immediately and some things that are longer term, as we start putting in the framework that we're looking to achieve, getting the money out, a lot of these other things will fall into place.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. I
You
think
want to talk
that
about
that's really
healthcare?
good. Yes. In fact, a lot of these, points actually correspond to all the questions that I had. I had a lot of questions already written, but in fact, the first line is tickling me pink right now.
Mhm.
So, but I can't believe I just said that in front of a presidential candidate. Anywho, but I'm just going to ask this question, and I can go line by line in this point. My question is basically healthcare is a massive issue, especially being in during a pandemic. I still consider we're part of a pandemic, because the risk is still out there. But according to the Commonwealth Fund
Mhm.
organization, the U.S. ranks 11th out of the top 11 most affluent nations in the world regards to its performance in healthcare. So basically, dead last. What tactics are you prepared to use to push for this United States national healthcare system as president? So for me, it's not necessarily what you believe, but it's how you plan to implement that policy.
Yeah, that's actually a very good question, and it leads into a conversation that I have to have with voters so they understand a lot of these things. So there are some of these things where you've got an immediate need where you can go and we can get the federal funds and we can put and we can make it happen. And I'd use
Yeah,
the example of executive actions
yeah,
with education debt, right?
hmm
And then others are gonna we're gonna have a transition plan. Okay.
hmm
One of the beautiful things about winning the presidency and why that is so important, why it didn't run down ballot, because when you have the presidency, you've got veto power and you've got the bully pulpit. So you're out there where you can get to the people and you can
hmm
open the conversation publicly, right?
yeah,
So we're going to open this conversation and we're going to bring everybody into it. We're going to bring the medical community into it, anyone involved in any aspect of healthcare, and 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 then we're going to develop. There may be a lot of different ways to do this, but it's going to be a transition. It's going to take time. So there may be certain states or certain cities that let's start here. And maybe we're going to do it this way here and see how that works. And we're going to do it this way over here and see. So we might try a couple of different things based on the best knowledge we can get from the experts.
hmm
And then what ends up working best will float to the top and we'll start rolling it out. So just like any change in any business, you
yeah,
start in one spot and you test it and you make
hmm
sure it works. Although there's a lot of testing that's involved in many of these things because other nations are already doing it. So but being the president and having that bully pulpit and having the support base that puts you there as an independent, you're now a representative of them, and you can organize them to politically make the change. So we can define the plan, and we
hmm
can put the political pressure on. Well, the president also has the power to veto. So anything that doesn't immediately serve the needs, any bill that comes across my desk automatically is vetoed. That forces
yeah,
it back to the Congress, and it's going to take 2/3 of them to override a veto. So right
yeah,
off the bat, they're going to have to work together,
hmm
right?
yeah,
So we're gonna end the politics of division. We're going to end the finger pointing, and we're going to use our base to put political pressure on these elected officials to get
Hmm.
this job done. And we're going to lay out specific plans for transitioning. Okay.
Hmm.
It might be one region one city at a time, one region at a time, one state at a time. But as we see how it works, we start rolling it out. Now, the other thing about a transition plan that people who are already in the field and they're used to doing a certain job, most people, whatever your job is, most people don't particularly care whether they, well, let's say I work in the mining industry and I extract coal from the earth. They didn't probably think when they were going to school, gee, what I really want to do is extract coal from the earth. No, what they wanted to do was make a living.
Yeah.
The reason they might be resistant to changing, if somebody threatens their industry, they feel the threat because somebody didn't define how they could transition safely. So
Yeah.
so when there's a worker that's going to be displaced, if industry can't figure out how to use that worker, the government could be the employer of last resort, and we'll bring them in. We have plenty of work to do. We need to
Hmm.
rebuild an infrastructure, a 21st century infrastructure, transportation system. There's so much to be done that we're going to need everybody. So there'll be nobody that wants to work that won't have a job, and we will safely transition them and protect their income. So now they aren't going to care whether they're no
Hmm.
longer mining coal.
Yeah.
They're still going to protect their family with the income, and they're going to be working, doing something. And they're going to do something that's valuable to all of society rather than destructive.
Hmm. So you're referring to what a lot of people think of as a federal jobs guarantee, because
Well,
that.
the employer of last resort. I mean, if they can be used by industry, and if industry needs them, that's fine, but they need to pay
Mhm.
them a livable wage, right? If
Yeah,
they
of
can't,
course.
the government will step in and we'll do it.
Okay, good.
Well, that's
So
what
this.
FDR did during the Great Depression.
Mhm.
So this is
Yeah,
not like something we have. We're not reinventing the wheel. We've already done this.
of course. You're just taking what works in the past and bringing it to the forefront
That's
in
right.
the
Yeah,
present.
that's right. But we have to define that transition plan so that we get buy-in and everybody understands how we're doing this, so that they don't feel threatened, so that they aren't resistant.
Of course.
Right.
Well, people need a just transition in order to be able to, like, for instance, if you're trying to transition us away from fossil fuels, and the people who work in the fossil fuel industry don't want to be left out in the lurch, because they are workers, and so you want to put them in a just transition that transfers from one industry to another, or gives them training from one industry to another, or if they just want to retire, then you can also facilitate that. So
Mhm.
um
I mean,
yeah.
I think one of the things I'd throw in here is that the United States as a country just has massive resources and wealth and abilities. And so this idea that it's difficult to give everyone a good job at a living wage is ridiculous. I mean, America can do that easily. It's a
Mhm.
Yeah.
matter of how are we just distributing our resources. And
That's
so
right.
even just having a bit less go up to the tippy top would make a huge difference.
Yeah. Thank you so
And that's
much
what
for
we're kind
that.
of we're talking about here as the minimum standard of living. I mean that can be achieved easily. We
Yeah.
just have to um, put in
Hmm.
the political leadership that believes in this vision.
Hmm.
Well, not just the political leadership. Even if I'm in the White House, it's not me actually doing the work. I'm just kind of the head of the spear. I'm the
Hmm.
tool. It's the people
We're
who
talking
are
about a
doing the work.
movement. Yeah.
The power is actually in the people. They just need to realize that.
Yeah. Okay. So going into this part, a minimum standard of living. That's something that a lot of people just don't talk about, right? No, what candidate has you ever heard said we need a minimum standard of living for everyone? Like, you don't hear about that. Um, so
Yeah, and the idea is like this idea of $15 minimum wage. It doesn't cover everyone. It's not enough. So what we're going for here is asking for more because people need more. People
Well,
deserve
we're
more.
actually not asking for more, Eric. We're actually going to we're going to just redistribute. The wealth is there.
Hmm.
We're
Yeah,
not asking for anything. We're creating a world that we want.
and making it a reality. Yep.
That's right.
But it goes beyond what you'll hear Democrats say is fight for 15. Well, that's a good compromise, but it's like we need to be shooting for a lot more.
No, economically, what we want to do is, well, I think one of the things that the government could do is we could have national banks. Okay, Richard Wolff talks about this a lot.
Yeah.
So if we had a national bank, we could use that banking system to then, whenever a business is transitioning, reorganizing, and they have a division and they say, oh, that no longer fits our business model, those employees in that group should have the option to purchase it. Now, the problem today, of course, is that they don't get funding. So they could be a cooperative owned and operated democratically, a worker co-op. And so if we had a national banking system, a national bank, we could then take those funds at, I would say, zero interest, because it's a transitional process. And over time, the employees would then own that. So we would have a society where we have some private organizations and then we have some cooperative organizations. And the people then can make choices about where they want to work. So,
Yeah, Roger Meadows, we're talking about worker co-ops.
Well, you hear capitalists talk about choices and competition. We're going to give them some competition.
Okay. All right.
We're going to make their dream come true.
So, first of all, just that first subheading just hit me like a ton of bricks in a very good way. Um, and I am openly a socialist. So one of my things that I absolutely appreciate is democracy in the workplace. We talk about as a country and as a government of spreading democracy, but we don't have it in the workplace as widely as we should. And so this subheading of democratizing the workplace is something that I think that actually spreads more freedom among workers, across the United States. And I just would like to line by line and just talk about it if that's okay with you.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So the first line says provide federal funds targeting underserved communities and incentives for employee-owned and controlled businesses. So this is something. It sounds like a sub for small businesses for co-ops. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, basically that is right. That's exactly what we want to do. I mean,
So if you had a business that was just a traditional business, and the owner decides that they want to sell it, and the workers decide want to take it over and run it as a co-op. Right now, the federal government is basically antagonistic to that. We need a government that not only supports that but provides funds for that, assistance for that. That's the vision.
Well, today, when a business, most businesses, the traditional businesses, the banking system, the private banking system has been geared to service their needs, right? So they can get the loans. But if the employees went and said, we want a loan, we want to purchase this, there's really no structure to do that. The banking system doesn't know how to do it. They wouldn't know who's responsible for this loan. How do we collect? And if it goes south, a federally funded, a federal institution like a bank could fund this and support it. And we could also, once that, now, of course, if that's something that serves the community's well-being, it would make sense. In other words, if it were coal mining and it's destroying the environment and the planet, that's not something we would want the employees to turn into a co-op. In fact, we would ask them to go to a place where they could be more productive and protect them that way. Maybe create retrain them, move them into other existing places. We certainly wouldn't leave them unemployed.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Next line says mandate that all publicly traded companies reserve board seats for employee and consumer representatives.
Well, the
So
board
this
of
sounds.
directors right now in a traditional company, so the board is the stockholders, and the stock, of course, being concentrated by the oligarchy. So essentially, the oligarchy puts people on the board, and who do they put? They put their buddies in other industries, their friends. They put their wives, and the type of board in the worker co-op that you're going to get. Number one, the employees are going to have one vote. Each employee gets a vote. Maybe in certain types of co-ops, you might have the community getting a certain number of votes. Okay. So
Okay.
maybe the community in which the business resides gets a couple of seats on the board. So you can structure co-ops in many different ways. And I think that you'll see that as we start going into these new models, these new business models, you'll see people trying different things. And then what works best will rise to the top, and some will succeed, some may fail. And we'll learn in the process, just like business now. But the difference is that these are democratically controlled institutions. Now, when you have a few board members that are in the community, they're certainly not going to vote to destroy their own community or pollute, are they? And the workers, if they're the ones making decisions, they're certainly not going to vote to outsource their jobs overseas. So we aren't going to have the kind of issues we have now with when you have, a handful of guys sitting in an office tower in New York, shutting a plant down and essentially taking a city and putting it into a tailspin, right?
Yeah.
So that's not going to happen with this kind of business setup.
Yeah, workers don't tend to vote to outsource their own jobs.
Very
Isn't that
true.
surprising?
Yep. Very surprising. So yeah, in true epic fashion, I see Roger Meadows in the chat. So right up his alley, and I love it because it's right up my alley too. Shout out to you, Roger. But the next point is, and I love this one: enforce antitrust laws, break up monopolies and large corporations like Facebook, Google, and other companies.
Yes, and some of the high tech. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, the laws are already there on the books, and of course, that's the other thing that having the presidency, you get the cabinet positions. So you can put the people in there to enforce the laws, right? So if the people buy this vision, if they put me into the White House, we're going to have an attorney general who's going to fall in line with the people's agenda.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and the next point kind of hits on that too. The transitioning companies providing essential services to democratically controlled utilities.
Yeah,
And, that one's kind of about you, like your YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. These big corporations, even Google itself. That first to some extent you're going to want to break them up. It's ridiculous how much conglomerations there's been. But even where you don't break them up with like a YouTube. If it's still going to be YouTube as what we're on now, it's basically this public utility that we basically can't do without. We turn it into a public utility, but we not only do that, we make it a public utility that is democratically controlled, where you have it could be a worker co-op style, it can be a co-op with input from the community and the public and things like that. And so that's the idea with that one.
Well, and the other part of that, when you think about utilities and we start thinking about infrastructure, right now California would like to, move more quickly to electric vehicles, and do away with the ones that burn hydrocarbons. The problem they're having, of course, is that their infrastructure, their utilities The electrical grid isn't up to snuff. So what we
Mm-hmm.
need really, when you start thinking about a lot of these transitions, we need
Mm-hmm.
to invest money in, and we have to have a Manhattan project that's
Mm-hmm.
going to help us design a clean energy network. Okay.
Of course.
So just like we had a Manhattan project to create an atomic bomb to destroy the planet, now we need a Manhattan project that's going to come in and look at all of the technologies to save the planet
Mm-hmm.
and to stop the environmental degradation and have a clean energy system.
And you get kind of a twofer from it because you not only work on climate issue, but you also have a jobs program
Mm-hmm.
because there's a
That's
whole ton of really good jobs that you can get from doing these kind of big programs.
And there'll be re-education. We're going to need more doctors. We're going to, you know, so by getting more efficient in all these programs, we're going to have plenty of resources, and people are actually going to be doing jobs that they love. They're going to be, they're going to feel like they're a real part of a community because they're serving the community.
gotcha.
It's going to elevate all of us.
Yeah. I like to give some attention to some comments that are going on in the chat. Uh, First one I want to give attention to is Roger Meadows. He says we need to go beyond antitrust enforcement and talk nationalization with the intent to someday transfer ownership to their workers. What is your response to that?
I like it. Well, one of the, yeah, one of the things, yeah, in a few words, I like it. Well,
Yeah.
one of the things that that's why we need to open the discussion. So my campaign is going to be putting together a channel similar to yours, and
Okay.
it's going to be a very open channel. We're going to invite people to come in, possibly over the phone, come in the way your followers are coming in now through
Hmm.
chats.
Sure.
And we want it to be interactive, and we're going to invite people um, from all walks of life and get a
Hmm.
lot of different perspectives on any given topic. And so
Hmm.
opening the discussion is a big part of it. As I said, you know, one of the beautiful things about perspectives and the diversity is you have other people that can come in and ask the tough questions and say, you know, what about this? How can we do it? And really, I don't have all of the answers. I've got a vision. I know what I want. But
Sure.
so we welcome criticism, but we ask that it be constructive criticism. Like if you're going to criticize our program, okay, how would you do it? What would
Hmm.
you do different? And you know, we're going to learn as we go.
Of
So
course.
it's going to be for the see if the people decide to put me in the White House, it'll be the first time in history they have a president that serves them rather than the other way around. It's as simple as that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So there's another one by Roger Meadows. He says reinstate postal banking, national infrastructure bank, and what you're talking about is using a right of first refusal law to convert
Mm-hmm.
banks into financial co-ops, aka credit unions.
Those are good options. Every one of them are good options.
Hmm.
And that's exactly the kind of stuff we've been talking about doing.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. And thank you to Susan Murphy for the super sticker. I appreciate that very much. He also talked about half the time in double pay. That's where we were talking automation earlier. So I think that's also really important. Roger also says tax burden needs to be shifted from homeowners to the federal government when it comes to paying for public school education K through 12.
Hmm.
So I agree with that. I know there's a lot of times people, are it a lot of our school system is based on property taxes, and so the areas that have more property tax revenue going towards the school versus lower income areas, and that really affects the performance of the schools. That actually makes it, dare I say this word, cattywampus as far as our structure education. So it's really multi-tiered education system instead of spreading it across evenly to all students within, you know, the entirety of this of the country.
Well, that's right, and that's what we talked about earlier. And beyond that, I mean, initially, there's some districts that there's some schools they have everything they need already.
Hmm.
Initially, as we do this, we're going to have to focus on where the real need is first. So we're going to have to probably divert more resources where the need is the greatest, right? But
Yeah,
eventually, we want to end up with a single public system
yeah,
all the way through. And when we have a single system where the wealthy and the not so wealthy kids are sitting side by side, every
sure.
parent's going to want to participate and fund it.
Hmm.
Nobody will be
Uh,
saying, oh, yeah,
okay. And this is the next one I have. This was a super chat from Give him the boot. Thank you so much for the super chat. He asked the question: Is John pro reparations, Medicare for all, canceling medical education, ending wars abroad, and free college trade school? This is a multi-pronged question.
can I answer that in a word?
Sure.
Bingo, bingo.
All right. I love when somebody is very
He hit
direct with
all.
their.
He's got his card filled out just right.
Yep. So thank you
We
so
got a
much.
winner.
Yeah, we got a winner, not a chicken dinner. Okay. So um, it says, oh yeah, here it is. Provide reparations, a solution to honor debts owed for past injustices. Well, that actually is one of my questions that I actually have written down as well that I was going to ask, but you answered it already, so I can cross that off on my list. So I appreciate it. So thank you so very much also for that. Um,
Well, just one word on the reparations.
sure,
Um, I think that we need to go where the need is. I mean, we have to make it somewhat targeted. There are going to be
sure.
people, yeah, their ancestors, well, let's say Native Americans,
Hmm.
maybe some that are doing well that actually don't need the money. And so it doesn't make any sense to devote to target them at all with any of the resources because we don't have unlimited resources no matter what we think.
Yeah.
So it's best to go where the need is greatest, And initially, when you do that, it'll start leveling it out, the playing field,
Hmm.
right?
I kind of,
So
I kind
I
of,
mean, does Oprah Winfrey need any reparations?
I get that. My only thing though is that it's not about asking who deserves what. It's a debt that's owed, and if feel that you know, it's a debt that's owed.
It is
It's
a
it's
debt
like
that's owed. I agree.
so. Even if somebody stole years ago $5 from Oprah Winfrey, does she still need the $5 back? No, but it's a debt that's still owed. See what I mean? So that's the only slight pushback that I'll give is that I think it's still a debt owed. So I think they should still get it regardless, even if somebody is rich, which sounds crazy even hearing me say it. But the fact is that it's still a debt owed, and I just think that we should just leave it at that. Um,
And this is what
so
we're talking about, JB, and having these conversations,
yeah,
and getting input,
yeah,
especially from people who traditionally and historically haven't had a voice.
yeah.
Well, in
We
the
want to
case of
hear.
Oprah Winfrey, as an example, I doubt that she'd take it anyway. She'd probably want to distribute it out. But even
Maybe.
someone like Ray Dalio, who's one of the most successful fund managers ever,
Hmm.
he recognizes and he a lot of very wealthy people are philanthropists. So they're not getting involved politically to
Hmm.
change the system to make it more just, but they think through their channels they can make a difference. So there are a lot of wealthy people who are actually well-meaning and they want to do the right thing, but the system, the way it works now, isn't going to allow them to actually be that effective. So we're not blaming people. We're
Hmm.
we're 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 focused on the system, not pointing the finger at who's the blame. It really
Hmm.
doesn't matter at this point who the blame is,
Hmm.
right? What we need to do is focus on the system and fix it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Gotcha. Thank you so much. I understand. Yeah. So going into justice reform, this is actually also another question that I had written down. Under criminal justice reform, it says address the root cause of crime, which is poverty. Thank you so much for saying this. I really appreciate this as well. I think this needs to be said is that a lot of people they typically commit crimes of desperation and lack of opportunity, which is the root cause of a lot of crime. I'm not saying it's the absolute root cause. I'm saying it in a relative sense that it is, a cause, for most likely a majority. Because if you go to more affluent neighborhoods, you see less crimes being committed because they have the resources, so they don't have to worry about getting the resources in order to be able to live a more productive life.
Right. And that's not an opinion. That's a statistical fact.
Hmm. Yeah. So, that's something that um, I really value, and so thank you. So this actually is going in towards one of the more, I say, touchy subjects of my question that some people, especially within the Democratic Party and especially the Republican Party, would run away from. But you're not part of the duopoly, so you're meeting it head on, and I thank you for that. But the next line says review police budgets and reallocate resources to the community. So, uh, if you can expand on that a little bit.
Well, again, I think that when you think about currently when we look at police departments,
Hmm.
we do need some sort of policing, but I would look at it more from a business perspective. I think that we have to basically redesign the way they are. When I grew up, I'm 71. I grew up in a town, and on the side of the police car, it said "Here to serve," right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And the policeman that was sitting in the vehicle looked more like Andy Griffith than Darth Vader. Those were different times. Those were different times. So a lot of the resources that are going to these police departments are really not necessary. I think what we need there are communities, I know in Denver, Colorado, they're redesigning their police force. So
Mhm.
you don't need somebody with a gun to respond to every single incident.
Mhm.
Sometimes what you need is someone that's familiar with addiction, a mental health specialist. So I think
Mhm.
we're going to design a police force around dealing with the social issues. But as our agenda comes into being and as we start investing in our communities, we're going to need less and less policing anyway, because our
Yeah.
people are going to be, you know, let's face it, the individual that was 18 that picked up the AR-15 and walked into that classroom,
Mhm.
he wasn't a model of a healthy person.
Yeah.
He wasn't born that way, but there's some systemic issues. He was deprived of his basic needs,
Mhm.
and he got to the point where he was mentally destabilized, and he
Mhm.
then acted out, right? So again, we need to think in terms of the integrated solutions. Will we get rid of policing altogether? No, we probably won't. There's always going to be some crime. There'll always be some policing, but I think we can certainly redesign it, and we can have it operating a lot more ethically, of course. And
Mhm.
I think policing, those people, I would elevate them. I would invest in training. They should know more about human psychology. They should know a lot more about addiction and how to work with people for addiction. So I think a lot of the problems in policing is that they're not equipped to deal with the environment that we have, right? Um,
Mhm.
I have a sheriff down the street from me is actually a part of my campaign. I can tell you that every day he goes out of his home, he has 4 kids. Every time he leaves his home, his life is in danger. It's just a fact. He's a nice guy. He really is. And if you sat next to him, yeah, and you'd recognize that. So he's got issues with the system the way it is now too. He's not happy with it. And certainly the media has been very good at dividing our community. Policemen are people too. They have families. But again, it's another part of the way our system is designed to divide us and atomize us. Because when we're atomized, then we can't unite to go after the root cause of the problems. And that's capitalism. And it's a corrupted political system. Those are the causes. So we're not going to blame people who have to operate in a dysfunctional system. Yes, they make mistakes. I don't agree with a lot that goes on in policing. That's for darn sure. But, the answer isn't just to tear it down. The answer is to make it work. It's the same thing. It's what we're doing is a political revolution. We don't want a violent revolution in this country. We don't want to tear the entire thing apart. The pain and suffering would go across all social life, all classes, right? So we're attempting a political revolution. We're going to try to change the system, but recognizing that it's on us. We have to do it. So we have to reject the politics of fear and division. Do not let the media and the political system turn you against your neighbors.
Of course, yeah.
We have to be united or we can't succeed. If you're going to demonize your neighbors, then don't be surprised when they don't try to demonize you. We have different viewpoints and we have different circumstances under which we live because of our conditioning. We have to do better together. It's the only way.
The thing I notice is that there was a quote by John F. Kennedy. He said, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable." I'm actually at a point right now where I hate to put it this way, but I think that the peaceful revolution route, I'm gearing towards that point of thinking that ship has sailed. I'm still trying to be optimistic about it, but at the same time, in regards to policing, do I think policing needs to be rethought? Yes. But I personally also do think that it needs to be rebuilt from the foundation up. Because the attempts at reformation within the police force have proven to be they've proven to not be very successful. But I also think that a divestment and from these and reinvestment into our communities so that they're needed even less, which is saying defund the police, is the best course of action to do. So
I mean,
yeah.
I think one thing we need to keep in mind is that as long as we have these communities and inner cities in our country that are just so far social economically so far down the ladder, as long as those things exist, this talk about whether or not to defund it is almost moot. I mean, as long as those types of communities exist, and as long as you have a 1% property owning class, you're gonna have that owning class that's running everything is going to have the police as their crowd control and property protecting force. And so if you don't fix those things and deal with these things systemically, then we're just like arguing within the Overton window, having the argument that they want us to have, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about really uplifting people to the point where it makes, them largely obsolete.
Hmm.
in a way. So I get that point. So
Well, that is exactly right. But and your feelings about can't is a peaceful revolution, a political revolution possible? Um, I I certainly understand why you would have that perspective given the history, right?
yeah. Hmm.
Um, but big things have happened when people come together. I can assure you that when Gandhi first started thinking about getting the British out of India, who had been there for 100 years or more, there were probably
Hmm.
a lot of people telling him it can't be done, right?
Hmm.
It's impossible. What are you, out of your mind?
Hmm.
They're not going to leave. And yet it did
Hmm.
happen.
Yeah.
Mandela in South Africa,
Hmm.
um, Castro in Cuba.
Hmm.
There have been a lot of
MLK.
revolutions that have the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution. So when people come
Hmm.
together for a common cause, now what is the common cause? What am I asking people to actually do? I'm
Hmm.
asking them to take all of those wedge issues that divide us.
Hmm.
We'll solve that. But what is the most important thing in your life? And most people come back to me and say, well, it's my children, it's my family, it's my friends, it's my community. Those are the things that are really important. If you could fix that, you know, I could reprioritize. That's the most important. And then all those wedge issues, a lot of those are just created by the oligarchy, by the corporate media to divide
Yeah.
us. Oh, what did I do? I closed this window. Oh, there we go.
Hmm.
Um, so I think, I'm asking people to avoid these, to put those wedge issues where they belong, lower. We'll solve those through our justice system when we reform it. Those things will fall into place as we start working together and building our communities the way we envision them, the way we know they could be. Okay.
Hmm.
But we can't do it as a divided nation. And that's why it's so important that we don't blame others who are
Hmm.
operating in dysfunctional ways because you aren't where they're at. It would be like me. I could maybe, I can kind of sympathize with somebody growing up in a country, a racist country. And I understand white privilege. But do
Hmm.
I know what it's actually like to be a person of color in this society? Not really. I can
Hmm.
imagine it, but
Yeah.
imagining it, I'm not really in those shoes,
Yeah.
right?
Of
And
course.
so, as sympathetic as I might be, as I'm never going to actually know. And that's why, we bring people together into diversity and we open the discussions and we do it
Yeah.
rationally. None of these problems are insurmountable. We can solve all of them, but we have
Hmm.
to do it together. We
Hmm.
can't do it when we're divided. And so if you're going to start pointing fingers and placing blame, then the others are going to come back and do the same. And we're never going to unite. And the system is going to continue exactly like it is.
Hmm.
That is how they're winning the class war. The first,
Hmm.
the first laws or the first rule in war is divide and conquer. And we
Hmm.
are in a class war. And the division works. They're very effective, right? And
Yeah.
so it's so easy to point the finger and blame. What's a little bit more difficult is to rise above that. Think
Hmm.
differently. Recognize that you're not perfect. You've done things you're not proud of because of the system that you were forced kind of into acting in ways that you probably wouldn't choose, right? Because you had to do it to survive. It's the only way you knew based on your conditioning. So
Yeah.
if that's true with you, wouldn't that certainly be true of everyone else? So why do we want to demonize and blame other people when all that's going to do is divide us and allow those that want to maintain the status quo and extract all the wealth just for themselves, allow that system to continue to survive? And then you have to ask yourself, well, what's the other option? A violent revolution? Really? Have you ever read any in a history book? Do you know what they're like? Do you know what happens to the people that engage in that? It happens as a last resort, just like Kenny said. If you can't do it politically, but I'm here to
Mhm.
tell you we can do it, and
Okay.
we have to change the way we think.
Okay. All right. We'll give you a chance,
You
but
you you understand? I know
but
it
it's
is
like
very
but it's
difficult.
like after this, something's gonna pop off, but
James, I
I kid a
promise
little
you,
bit, but
it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
okay. All right. So next point, we're and I don't want to keep you too much longer, but this is an important point: is being the commander in chief, you are head of the United States Armed Forces. So this part is ending the wars. The first line says, "End perpetual wars for profit and shift to a peacetime economy."
Mhm.
Um, what does if you can expound on that a little bit?
Well, let's imagine, okay, before I go directly to the military industrial complex,
Sure.
let's suppose that we have the technology to build a car
Hmm.
that can go 5 million miles, right?
Hmm.
But in a capitalist system that demands profit, when would
Hmm.
that customer come back to buy the next vehicle? If you built a car actually that went 5 million miles, you'd be out of business. And
Hmm.
so they have planned obsolescence. They
Yeah.
make them obsolete so that you can, and that's so if you're in the business of making bombs, you have to blow them up. And if you're
Hmm.
not blowing them up, you're out of business, man.
Yeah.
That's why it's the economic system that drives that behavior. The reason we have the perpetual wars is because we have a system where the only thing that matters is profit. And that's the way it's going to remain as long as we have an oligarchy that controls everything. That's why it's so important for people to unite.
Hmm.
The only way you're going to change that is when we're united. We are the 99 and they're the 1%.
Gotcha.
They don't stand a chance when we're united. How would you do up against 99 others?
Yeah, I'm a bleeder, so I wouldn't do too well. So, but that's a really good point. The next line is cut the military budget by at least 20% every year. So it's more like uh, a gradual divestment from the Department of Defense, basically.
Right. So as we create other jobs in other places, then people can move out of those industries and they can start working on the Green New Deal. They can start building the infrastructure. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to take some of that money, we're going to develop a diplomatic corps. We're going to reach out and we're going to engage nations. We aren't interested in a win-lose relationship with the world.
Hmm.
Some of the big problems that we have to solve, like global climate change, we can't
Hmm.
solve by ourselves. We
Of
need
course.
them and they need us, but we
Hmm.
are all at risk. So it won't be a hard sell once we start engaging, but
Hmm.
we have to change the fundamentals of the way the system works. And the only way we can do it is together. Okay. So
I mean,
it
I
goes,
think if I could just jump in, one of the purposes of that line, like cut the military budget by at least 20%, it isn't to say like, that's the big end goal or that's what is going to fix things. It's really to just draw a harsh differentiation between what John and his campaign are proposing and what Democrats do
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
Republicans. Because what do? Every year, they increase the defense budget. I mean, it's amazing.
well, they
I
both
mean,
agree on that.
right, and it's just so. I mean, if you just say we need cuts of that budget, you're just leaving the whole Democrat and Republican Party candidates out on the side of the road, far behind.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So the next one is, and this one just made me think of the police actually in sales of military weapons by U.S. companies. Um, a lot of the, the a lot of the high powered, weapons of war are being given to police, and so this would also cut down on that as well, as part of that divestment.
That's right. The police have been militarized, and we've seen it over the last 12, 40 years. It's been ramping up, and now it's ridiculous. They actually have, armored vehicles. I mean, they look like paramilitary troops, not like the
Yeah.
kind of police I grew up in. So, it's hard to imagine that someone in the police force, when they look like that, could actually be part of a community.
Yeah. Definitely. I like what Roger Meadows actually said. He said nationalize weapons manufacturers to remove profit incentives to go for going to war. That goes beyond cutting it. So if there's no money in war, then there's really no need for us to go to war. So what are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
we have to engage the world. We have to. One of the things we talk about war crimes. We're not a signatory to the International Criminal Court.
Hmm.
Okay, so we have to stand up for international law, and we have to be supportive of it, and we have to go in and engage nations so that
Hmm.
both their citizens win and we win. We don't want to engage them so that their citizens become slaves. They're working class, right? So we have to take the same principles and the same
Hmm.
policies that we have here, and we
Hmm.
have to go and work with the rest of the world so that their
Yeah.
leaders can do the same. And we could be the example. We could start setting the example here. And when we do, we actually are going to be much more prosperous, because think about the cost of dysfunction.
Yeah.
Think about all of the people we have in prisons who could be contributing to society had we set our justice system up to rehabilitate rather than to punish,
Hmm.
right? The people that are there were mostly victimized themselves at an early age, which is why they end up turning to criminal activity. So
Yeah.
we, so when you, so at the immediately, what we do is we take the ones that are already, their lives have been destroyed, and we try to rehabilitate them and get them back into a productive place where they start feeling like human beings. We give them a real job and a way to make a living, right? And
Hmm.
and 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 that's what most of them actually really want.
Hmm.
Um, it's going to be so. So what do you do there? Now, not only do you have to not pay to house that. So let's say it costs anywhere from 35 to 70,000 per prisoner, and I think that's about what the range is.
Hmm.
Um, the big loss is not that. The big loss is the opportunity loss. What would have happened had they been productive? So when you add up the cost of the expense of imprisoning them, and then you
Hmm.
add to it the opportunity cost, that is an incredible amount of waste. And now we redirect that waste back into our communities.
Hmm.
That's how you change the world.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Also, you see, it says create a Department of Peace to work with the international community to resolve disputes without violence.
A diplomatic corps, exchange students could be a part of this.
Hmm.
Um, a Department of Peace. A lot of the people that go into the military, they go into the military because maybe they can't figure out another way to make a living. Maybe they want to pay for college. Let's give
True.
them another option. Let's have a
Hmm.
department that goes out and they become, well, maybe exchange students. They engage other societies, and then people begin to realize we're all the same. We're one common humanity, and
Hmm.
we know that because of the DNA evidence. We're all cousins,
Yeah.
every one of us, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And so we're related, and more than that, we're interdependent.
Yes.
So think about it in your family. One individual that is struggling and not making it can disrupt the entire family,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Well, so, and imagine if you have a family that's so dysfunctional that everybody in the family is dysfunctional, and that happens, right? So we have to go right to the root cause. We have to go to the individual level. We have to go to
Hmm.
every single child, and we have to make sure that their needs are met.
Hmm.
And that's where we're going to, all that money we save, in the on that we were spending on these perpetual wars for profit, spending on a justice system that imprisons more people than any other nation in the world, the health system that's dysfunctional, the education system that's tiered, that doesn't work well for our kids. Our kids are not rating well when compared to our competitors. And all we have to do is look at what are they doing? How come their kids are doing better than us in math and sciences and all those things that will propel humanity and society forward? We need to start adopting some of those and looking for the best of breed. And we can do, then when we all start to do better. So you can see how it all ties together. So there are going to be some of these line items as we go through these lists are going to be things as an executive I can do with executive order, stroke of a pen. Other things are going to have to work in overtime, and we're going to have to develop transition plans. But the big part of it is that we're going to open the conversation and everyone is invited to the table. Everyone.
Don't encourage to go here. I do have one, but and this is the thing that's I saw that you also wanted to do a house off is the thing that there's absolutely a reason they should. But another thing that I want to ask you about is people like this are for retirement as well as so as far as your opinion on how we uplift people who are in the situation, what is the plan that you have for those who
Something's
are
going on with the
either
audio.
retirement or those who are security?
Yeah, James, you're
Sorry,
breaking
can you
up.
hear me still?
No, you're
Yeah.
breaking up. I didn't
Um,
understand anything you said in that last part.
oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
You're
Coming in
kind of
clear?
you're kind of coming in and out, but uh, the internet gods are crushing us.
Is that what it is?
Am I coming in clear now?
That's better.
Is better?
It's still breaking up, but it I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
I really still hear. Can you hear me?
Only
Eric, do you wanna is there
only
anything we can do about that or do you know?
only intermittently. Well, I mean, um, we can talk about rejecting censorship
Can you
and
guys hear me?
uh,
Yeah. You can you hear me?
sometimes.
Wow. Okay.
It's like it's coming in and out.
I'm uh I'm gonna try to ask this question. Um, but it was regarding Social Security disability. What was your plan for that? If you can hear me.
Something about Social Security. Well,
I mean,
I mean, at a Social Security today. Well, I guess we lost him there. Hopefully he'll come back. I'll talk about Social Security. Hopefully he'll
yeah.
come back in.
Well, I mean, we have this on the vision statement. You know, the idea of protecting Social Security and expanding its
Yeah,
benefits.
yeah. I mean, Social Security. That's a real easy solution. I mean, basically, one of the easy things to do is we tax all the way up through uh, the income spectrum. So today, currently, we have a cap, and once you reach that cap, we could remove the cap so that would build the Social Security fund. So that's a real quick and easy solution.
Although I would say to you,
Okay.
John, why
So
do we need a Social Security fund? Why can't we just be paying for Social Security the way we pay for the military budget and other things? And this kind of gets
Well,
into these kind of things you hear in the MMT realm of of we shouldn't be thinking in terms of budgets and deficits and what we can afford, but more in terms of priorities and
Yeah, that's right.
deprioritizing military and prioritizing things like Social Security and expanding it.
Yeah, but that's right. But you still could account for it separately. I mean, essentially, what Social Security was designed to do is when people in the society either get older and have to retire, or they get sick and they get disabled, we have a safety net. So that's what it's designed, and it's intergenerational. It's an intergenerational contract, so that at a point in life where you're no longer able to, or are ready to retire and move out of the workforce, that the new generation will help support the outgoing generation. So it's a system that's designed, and it can work, but it has to be funded properly. And so currently the short-term fix, of course. And so, Eric, we talk about, short-term and long-term
Okay.
goals. Some of the things are immediate things that we can fix. And that would be one of them: just take the cap off, increase the funding. But long-term, you're right, Eric, it would just be another part of an integrated social services network.
Well, it
Because
could be fixed that way in the short term too. Congress could pass a bill tomorrow to just directly fund Social Security.
Well, I mean, those are the kinds of things that when we open up the conversation, we can discuss. But
Can
there's
you guys
many
hear me
ways.
well?
There's many ways to do it. We hear you a little bit, but you're still breaking up.
No, we're not hearing you, JB.
Actually, I've got the microphone. Looks like it's got a line through it, so it's like it's not working at all there.
Let's see. Is there anything, any big ones in here that we haven't hit that we want to talk about? Maybe climate?
Well, we kind of talked about the Manhattan Project. So we kind of touched on that. I've touched on criminal justice. I think, the website's available for his audience to go check out. We will certainly have follow-ups, I'm sure.
And censorship is a big one.
That's-
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Maybe?
You can't hear me?
I can hear you, yep.
Can you hear me?
Can you
Oh,
hear us?
okay. I ch- yes, I can hear you perfectly. Okay, so I had to change.
Okay, we got
a
you
little
now.
bit. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. uh those darn alphabet bureaucracies. But
Hmm.
I think one thing that I was referring to, or I let you guys go, was the aspect of many of us who are on Social Security disability and those Social retirement. What we get is deeply inadequate as far as benefits are concerned, to the point where many of us are living in poverty right now. And I've said, and some people will be crazy when I say that a lot of our own security, disability, and retirement, we actually need our benefits to be quadrupled or quintupled. That's how bad it is for many of us. So I was just trying to get your on to how the plan was for that.
I mean, I think one of the ways we phrased it is this idea of a minimum standard of living, for everyone. And so what that would mean is that if you
Yeah.
look like how a middle class person lives, even an upper middle class person, we should say that every person in the country should have that standard of living. And so, it becomes then a question of how do we make that happen? And if we, and so the ways you make that happen are the things on here, like providing homes for all, social housing, the federal jobs guarantee, Social Security. But that can also come down to a type of Social Security that's really about providing people a minimum income, regardless of their situation or their working. I mean, we want to have this minimum that's as low as you can drop.
Right, and it could be immediate. We don't we don't fund things through taxes anyway. So we know very
Gotcha.
well, you know,
The money's there.
MMT is something that people are talking about a lot. Now, it's not to say that we can just, you know, take. We still have limited resources, no matter what we set up the economic system. So it's a matter of prioritizing. But I think, Eric, I think you hit on it. We're going to have a bottom line. We're going to a minimal level
Yeah,
that everybody
I
gets.
get it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. That was a book by Professor Stephanie Kilton. She wrote one of the books on MMT. So I pick
And
up
if
what
you
you're
don't like
throwing down,
MMT,
basically.
and if you don't like MMT, then just look at it in terms of let's take all the money from the military and put it to Social Security and and social services.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Done.
it's just a matter of distribution. It isn't a matter of scarcity.
Yeah.
hmm yeah, yeah. Okay. So many more questions that I want to ask, but
Hmm.
I don't want to keep you too long. Plus, I got to be up at 4:30 in the morning. So I had dialysis tomorrow, so I can't be up too much more later. But one rapid fire question before I go. People like Stephen Dotzinger and Edward Snowden, who are basically being persecuted by the United States, and then you have journalists like Julian Assange.
Mhm.
Uh, do we make sure that they are protected?
Absolutely. In fact,
Okay,
we want a sunshine law. What we want to do is we want people who are identifying criminal behavior in their organizations to be
hmm
protected. So to
perfect.
reveal that, and we could even have part of our staff in the White House manage that program. So
hmm All
so
right, perfect.
beyond um, stopping the persecution of these individuals, we want to actually
Mhm.
protect them.
Perfect. Thank you so very much. So yeah, we're gonna have to stop it here. This was actually a really great discussion. I love discussions that are very policy heavy, so that we can get into the meat and potatoes of what is best for us. And really, the primary thing I focus on is that you were focused on is that really giving everyone basically that support, a foundation that nobody's left out. And then once you give somebody that foundation, then we all start to, those diseases of despair go down. And then we start to actually relax a little bit, and our brains start to work a little bit better. And we start to see that, yeah, everything is more better when we have cooperation, collaboration, and collective action within the country, instead of having this division, which is constantly perpetuated by the oligarchs, as well as corporate media that we have. So yeah.
And just
um
imagine, like this vision, if you could go into the voting booth or fill out your ballot, however you do it, and vote for someone who says these things and sounds like this.
mhm,
Just imagine what that would be like.
mhm,
That'd be pretty
definitely
awesome.
amazing. Thank you so much. And also, just to let you guys know, in the description, I also put the link to the 11th Amendment by Eric, as well in the description, as well as uh, John's website to his campaign in the description as well. So you can go ahead and get to there if you're watching this on the rewatch. So just let you guys know. As far as where people can find you and how they can connect with you, John, where can they do that?
Well, the best place to start is through the website. Okay, and they fill out the form, and they can. We've got some free text that they could just enter in anything they want, any questions. So
Sure.
as the website gets further developed, we're going to improve the communication, and then of course, as I indicated, we're going to have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook and and Twitter and all of the other platforms. So there are plenty of ways to reach us. And then we've got people in our campaign who are working on responding to the people in our database.
Okay.
What I would really like people to do is to come and join us. And if they can afford to volunteer to help us out, we're going to need coordinators in each and every state to help us get on the ballot in those states.
We're gearing up.
All right. Any last parting words that you want to leave with us, Eric and John, before we go?
I'm going to lead with love and compassion if you give me the opportunity.
Be my
Sounds
guest.
good. I think he said it.
All right. Thank you so very much.
And just imagine a better world, and we can get there.
Definitely, definitely. Eric, John, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you both, coming here. It's a privilege, to have you guys on here. People who are very policy minded and minded about how we're all connected into the world. So I just really appreciate you coming on here to my little channel, to have this discussion with me.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I
Thanks a
appreciate
lot, JB.
everything you've done for us.
Yeah, thank you so very much. Just to let you guys know, if you are, a little bit more curious, please make sure to go to Jon Stasevich's his campaign website as well, and then you can go to the 11 Demands by Eric as well. Also, thank you to all the people who are watching, on the different platforms. Please continue. I definitely appreciate it. If you have not liked the stream, please make sure to give the stream a like. Thank you to all the patrons on Patreon as well as Coffee for your contributions. For without you guys, I don't have a channel, and it really does help me. Things have been really rough lately, so I definitely appreciate it. And thank everyone to all the super chats as well as the questions as well. I really appreciate it. I wish I could have got to more of them. It's just a conversation. This is a long conversation, and hopefully, in the near future, I can have you back on so we can discuss more topics that we didn't get to today, because there's a few more questions that I would like to ask as well.
I'd appreciate that.
All right.
Great. Thanks, JB.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Good night.
Bye, all.